Hey, I'm Randy, and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we talk about high-value hi-fi, home theater, and headphone equipment. And today, can a $150 speaker compete with a $750 speaker? No way, right? I don't know. Let's find out together. Grab a cup of coffee, sit down, and let's compare the Sony SSCS5s to the Klipsch RP600M Mark II. So, I just did the review on the RP600M Mark II. I like it. It's a great speaker. It's a Klipsch speaker, unapologetically so. I was trying to figure out a cheaper speaker that had similar characteristics to the RP600M Mark II, and I thought, maybe maybe my favorite Sony SSCS5s. I think they're kind of similar. They have kind of a emphasis in the upper mid-range, a tilted top end, maybe. I like, what the heck. I had these in the garage, unopened, in a box. Every time they go under $100, I just buy a pair. Currently, they're going for about $170 on Amazon. I'll link them in the description. I'll link the Klipsch too. Right now, they're $750. The RP600M Mark I on sale right now on Amazon, $400. And guess what I did last night? I ordered another pair, which should be here tomorrow. So I will do another review, another video that compares the RP600M Mark I to the RP600M Mark II. I took these out of the box, burned them in all night last night, and I sat down for a few hours today, and I compared these two. Let's talk about what equipment I used. So my Mac Air was the source. I think I'm going to buy one with more memory. I love the Mac Air. I'm running out of memory on it. RAM. Like, you were very interested in that. Anyway, I had these hooked up to the Geshelli Labs J2, running into, the Akatika PT102. It's a preamp. I could be getting that model number wrong. And then going into the Emotiva A1 monoblocks. So I had plenty of power. Plenty of power. Plenty of power. I had a great DAC. Man, I'm making myself laugh. I'm sorry. I had a great DAC going into a great preamp, going into great amplifiers that have a ton of power. Okay, so we're going to take any of the electronics arguments off the table. There's no problem with those electronics. All in, let's see, the monoblocks are $900 for a pair. The DAC is $300, so we're at $1,200. And then the preamp, if you build it yourself, I think it's $400 or $500. So that's $1,800 worth of electronics. I had the electronics covered. Then I used Amazon Music running, through all of it. It was terrific. It was wonderful. I ended up listening to about 5 songs, really closely listening, intently listening. Even Flow by Pearl Jam. I Gave You All by Mumford & Sons. The Light by Disturbed. Shoot to Thrill by AC/DC, and then I can't remember the other one. Anyway, I had the same takeaway from every song I listened to. So it doesn't really matter. Let's talk about, by the way, I listened to these in the near field, in my office. I was about 3 feet away, 1 meter. And that's going to be important in just a second. It's about 1 meter away from these, and these were about 1 meter apart. Equilateral triangle, or best that I could do. Let's talk about Soundstage and Imaging. They both did a great job of imaging and soundstage. Frankly, I was a bit surprised just how good the Sonys are and still continue to be. Sony's put the stage pretty much in line, if not a little bit behind the speakers. The Klipsch pushed it forward a bit. Both had very good vertical imaging above the speakers. Oftentimes, the voices would be above the tweeter level. They both did a great job of lateral soundstage and imaging. I guess it would be tie. Depending upon if you wanted a more forward stage versus a stage behind the speakers is going to depend upon which one you want. But let's talk about some bass. We have different types of woofers. We have a cerometallic and we have some type of like fiber, paper-ish woofer on the Sonys. These are two distinctly different speakers. We have a 2.5-way basically with the Sony, and then we have a 2-way with a Klipsch. Titanium driver, silk dome, tweeter and super tweeter. 5.25 inch, 6.5 inch. So we would assume that there would be a lot more bass out of the Klipsch. And your assumption would be correct. There is a ton more bass presence out of the Klipsch. That does not mean that the Klipsch is a better speaker when it comes to bass. Frankly, the Sonys out-finessed the Klipsch fairly easily. A lot more clarity in the bass coming out of the Sonys. That could be, it might be, perhaps, it's a function of the room, because there is so much more bass energy coming out of the Klipsch. It could be covering up, or boomy, could be covering up some of that bass clarity. I did bring it down a bit more, but the surprising thing here is I was still hearing more detail, more bass detail out of the Sony SSCS5s. That may not make any difference to you, because the Klipsch sounds more dynamic. It sounds like there is... You can feel the bass way more on the Klipsch than you can on the Sony SSCS5. I wish the Klipsch was a little bit tighter, though. A bit more clean. Take a bath. Clean it up. Let's talk about Midrange. If you are new here, consider subscribing. Please like the button. You can always take your like away. You can always unsubscribe. But we have over 470 videos. Speakers, amps, DACs, turntables, home theater stuff, headphones, all sorts of stuff. It's a lot of fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously. So like this video and subscribe. Huge difference in mid-range here. The Klipsch are way more forward. And when I was getting ready to do this comparison, I thought they were going to be more similar. I thought, because the Sonys, they have a tendency to be a bit forward in the upper mid-range. Not even close to being as forward as the Klipsch. Even flow, Pearl Jam, 42-second mark. The Klipsch sounded nasally in comparison. And it really sounded like someone was talking through a horn. I don't know if that should be a surprise, because we do have a horn here. But it was a pretty stark contrast to the Sony. The Sony mid-range seemed a bit more natural, but the Klipsch was way more in your face with mid-range. Male vocals sounded, I guess, equally as weighty on both of these speakers, but there was such a different presentation with the Klipsch than there was with the Sonys. One of the biggest differences I heard, though, was in acoustic guitars. I heard a lot more detail out of the Sonys. This is a weird review to do, because I am hearing things in the mid-range, detail-oriented things, out of a significantly lower price speaker that I personally would consider to be more appealing. I'm not saying that my opinion is going to be everybody's opinion, and I am not saying that I am right. Personally, for me, I love detail. Love hearing detail with acoustic guitars, with voices, with breath sounds, with everything. The more detail, the better. I love it. I feel like I'm getting extra music. I heard more detail with the Sonys in the mid-range than I did on the Klipsch. But the Klipsch is pushing things way more forward. I gave you all by Mumford & Sons. Again, way different presentation. Voices more forward. Acoustic guitars more detailed. I really don't know what else to say here. I will say this, though. The Sonys had a tendency to be more sibilant than the Klipsch. And I thought it could be, I thought that would be the opposite. I thought the Klipsch could be more sibilant. But the Klipsch aren't sibilant at all. It was just in your face in that upper mid-range area. Let's talk about treble. Back to Even Flow by Pearl Jam. There is a ride cymbal in the back. Even flow, something like that. Anyway, I could barely hear it on the Klipsch. It was loud and clear, definitive, separated on the Sonys. It was covered up, and I think it was covered up by that mid-range bump. Neither one of these speakers measure flat. And depending upon how a speaker measures, there can be a perceived emphasis on a specific frequency, even if that frequency isn't bumped, basically by having the frequencies in front of it being scooped a little bit more. I do that all the time on EQ. If I want to emphasize a certain frequency, sometimes I'll just turn the frequency to the left of it down a bit so it's more apparent, because frequencies can cover up frequencies around it. So if I want a boost at 4K, sometimes I just have to turn 2K down a bit. Either way, it all sounds the same, whether or not I'm boosting 4K or if I'm cutting 2K. People will probably argue with that, but that's how I do it. I just heard more treble on the Sonys, more detail. The Sonys at times seemed a little bit artificial. Similar to something along the lines of the Emotiva B1 Plus. In my full review video, I said that the Klipsch have a similar characteristic as the B1 Plus, being tilted on the top end. These are more tilted than these. So these, the Sonys, actually seem a little bit even more artificial than the Klipsch RP600M. But the Sonys have more detail, more clarity. I heard better instrument separation on the top end from the Sonys. What are my final thoughts? I feel weird about this video because on one hand, I am the cheap audio man. This is my channel. The whole channel is predicated on the fact that you can get great sound out of less expensive electronics, speakers, amps, DACs, turntables, the whole thing, right? And I think at some point it's kind of like a shtick for me. Like, oh, this amp, this $100 amp is just as good as a $900 amplifier, whatever it is. Or they're similar, at least. In this case, this is my preference only. I'm not saying that I am right for you. Everybody has different likes, different preferences when it comes to speakers. But in this case, I actually prefer the sound of the Sony SSCS5 over the Klipsch RP600M Mark II. And it's not a shtick. It's just me listening to both of these with the same song, with the same electronics, in the same place, in the same room, and picking the one that I like better. And it's the Sonys. I listened at higher volumes too, to make sure that I'm just not hearing some level differences, which brings up one of the most important points of this whole video. I pulled out my phone. Phone has a microphone. I have a decibel meter on my microphone. I reached out to one speaker, had them both playing in mono. Left speaker was the Klipsch, right speaker was the Sony. Both in mono, same song. I held my arm out. I put my phone in the same position at the same levels. Surprisingly, the Sony was actually playing louder. If one looks at the specifications, the Klipsch has a much higher sensitivity than the Sony. Therefore, it should be playing much louder than the Sony. I found the opposite to be true. The Sony was a titch louder than the Klipsch. We can chalk that up to me being a couple of inches in front or below. What we cannot dismiss is that there should have been a larger delta in the levels. The Klipsch should have been playing much louder. At least a couple of dB louder, and they were not. They were actually quieter. Sonys are rated at 87 dB. Either the Sonys are way more efficient than 87, or the Klipsch are way more inefficient than what they're, I think, 94, 92? I don't know. I thought I was going to have to level match these, and in a way I did have to level match these because I actually had to turn the Klipsch up a little bit to get them the same levels of the Sonys, which should not be the case. This is a video where I am talking about the differences and my personal preferences when it comes to a speaker. The Klipsch are definitely way more dynamic. The Klipsch have way more bass presence. Where I find there to be a significant difference, though, is in the forward-leaning nature of the Klipsch and then the clarity. I think the Sony was much better as far as detail retrieval across the board. Bass, mid-range, and top end. Klipsch punches way harder. Definitely different frequency response. And that could be your thing. Could be your preference. But for me, I prefer the Sonys. Across the board, really. They're not going to punch you in the face with the bass. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just turn this up because the Klipsch will really pull away and be way better at louder volumes. And at louder volumes, really what happened is the nasally nature of the mid-range actually got a bit more pronounced. These did start to fall apart. About 83, 85 dB. I started losing all of that instrument separation, the detail. And this was probably, I was pretty close up. So in a larger room, it's going to be way worse because you're going to really start pumping some juice through these. They're going to lose that magic that they have at higher volumes, especially at greater distance. So keep that in mind. Klipsch did keep it together, but in the near field only, I still felt like the Sonys were a better choice for me. I am not saying the Klipsch are not worth the $750 asking price. Just reporting what I hear and what I prefer. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. There is no better speaker. There's no best speaker. There are speakers that you may prefer over another, and that's it. Just because I prefer the Sony over the Klipsch does not make it a better speaker. It could be better for you because it's a lot less expensive. And for my personal predilections, I like the Sony. Anyway, if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night we have patron-only Zooms. We also have a patron-only Facebook group, a patron-only Discord server. We do patron giveaways. You can also use the links in the description. I'll link both of those speakers. These are running for $170 right now. Still a decent price. They keep going up in price. I am hoping that they go to their lowest level here pretty soon, but it hasn't happened for a while. These right now, $750. The RP600M, first generation, really on sale at $400. So that may be something you should consider. Again, I'm getting those in today or tomorrow. And so I will do another review comparing the RP600M first gen versus the second generation. You can also use the thanks button. Down below, right below the video next to the share button, there's a little heart with a money sign. If you got any value out of this video, you can buy me a cup of coffee or two. You can also sign up for Amazon Music or Tidal. Tidal's also running a deal right now, 3 months for $9.99. So you can try out Tidal for $10 for 3 months, see if you like it. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen, maybe through one of these new speakers, and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.